Hi, my name is Andrew Stevens, and I'll be sharing my analysis of Radiohead's Subterranean Homesick Alien and how it may compare or serve as a pastoral work. So, before analyzing the song, this was one of my favorite Radiohead songs, and just as a passive listener, I loved it because I felt it painted such a vivid picture in my head. At first, I thought, oh, it has to be because the lyrics contain lines such as "in a country lane late at night while I'm driving," but I found it actually runs a lot deeper than that. But to talk about the song to call it a pastoral work, I kind of have to frame what that is first. So, just the broad terms, the dictionary definition is any work that's in literature, art, and music that has simplicity, charm, serenity, pertaining to the countryside or of country life and being portrayed idyllically. And there's three main tenets, main underlying themes. There's simplicity, reformation, and idealism. And these are things that I'm going to come back to when we talk about the lyrics of the Radiohead song. So specifically in music, there's two senses of general and specific. So generally, is just a work that contains these three elements, and in a way refers to the country lifestyle. So an example of this would be Beethoven's Sixth Symphony, and his definition of the symphony actually is a great way to describe how this general concept works. And he said it's more the expression of feeling than painting. But despite him saying that, it's his most programmatic work, actually. He titled the movements titles such as "The Feelings Upon Arrival in the Countryside," "Seen by the Brook," "The Gathering of Country Folk," "Storm," and "Shepherd's Song," which are all very explicit in what they're talking about. But it doesn't have a specific mode of composition. Another example is Les Preludes. This is even more general, as the program isn't as explicit, but it does have these kind of senses that Beethoven Six does. This kind of storm expression of feeling. Now, specifically, we can be talking about the composition style known as Pastoral. It's meant to be evoking music of Italian shepherds. And here are just three examples of that, from Handel's Messiah, from Vivaldi's Spring Concerto, and one of Bach's organ works. Now, to mention as a composition style, we have to talk about those specific characteristics. As far as form, it was mostly used in the Baroque era. It was also used in opera and ballet, but it was mostly binary forms or improvisatory forms, which would mimic the shepherd songs. Rhythm and meter, they were slower tempos and didn't have a lot of rhythmic complexity. They were always in compound meters. Harmony was a big feature, was having a drone bass or having some sort of drone instrument going on. Diatonic harmonies only, and the melody was often in canon with another melody, so in thirds. As far as timbres, a thing that was very common in this type of music was the use of text painting. So a great way to evoke the sounds of nature would be to literally have an analog for nature. So bird calls were an obvious one to do. As far as like Beethoven's composition, and Liszt's, like creating effects that sound like a storm and wind is something that's definitely possible. But now going back to Radiohead song, I bring up the specific Pastoral example because a lot of those elements actually fit in to Radiohead song as well, not just the general elements. So as far as form, here's my breakdown of the form of the song. One of the more, it's in general verse chorus, so it kind of fits into an A B, but the more interesting aspects are these tags at the beginning and the end. Um, and when we look at the lyrics, there's a line that talks about aliens hovering above, making home movies of the Earth, their visit to Earth. And I feel this kind of fits into this tag sense, because the tags don't necessarily fit into the key of the rest of the song, and the rest of the song has a very repetitive chord progression. So these tags kind of, in my eye, are kind of an intro and outro to like a home movie. That's kind of how I see it anyways. As far as rhythm and meter, it's a moderate 6/8, so obviously a compound meter that would share in common with the Pastoral. And it's definitely less rhythmically intense than a lot of other Radiohead songs. Harmony, it would fit under Dr. Brad Osborne's definitions of a contrapuntal system, but it's like almost functionally modal in a way that the tag chord progression can almost tonicize a half cadence, where the G mixolydian running throughout could be almost tonicized by having this mostly D major D minor tag at the beginning and end. So this repeated progression we get throughout, it's a common device in many Radiohead songs of having pedal points, and in this song definitely it creates a G drone throughout. And the only other progression besides the one I've showed you is a flat 7/4/1 progression, and that just helps cement this G mixolydian feel with the F natural. As far as timbres, there's kind of 4 unique timbres put on the guitar with effects, and I'll show you this right now. There's, if you listen to the song, it's very clear how these are used, but we have the space echo delay, pitch shifting in the live recording, use of a whammy bar, but maybe in the studio recording he used a whammy pedal instead, and reverb. And all these timbres help to provide this atmosphere that I was talking about. So it not only gives this kind of atmosphere of like this kind of lilting, spacey, like when I say spacey, I mean just wide open space, like thinking of staring at the stars with no urban sprawl to block any of the stars. You're just seeing this wide, cold, open space. And then the crazier echo and whammy bar can almost be like a space bird if you think about it. It has this, it kind of sounds like a bird, but maybe not from this earth. But that's how I like to think about it anyways. I don't think it's too far of a stretch, but now we're going to look at the narrative and lyrical content of the song. So obviously if we're going to look at this, I got to bring up those 3 tenets that I talked about to actually identify as a pastoral work. So obviously a lot of the musical characteristics fit in a pastoral, but these are the more important aspects we have to talk about. So in terms of simplicity, we have a very obvious in the lyrics talking about this urban versus rural environment. So in the first verse, he talks about living in a town, and then in the third verse we see driving down a country lane. So that's the very surface level look at it. But what he also mentions is forgetting just these very simple things of just human senses. He can't remember the breath of the morning or the smell of warm summer air. And he mentions that in the town where he lives, he can't smell anything, and he has to always watch his step. He says, "You watch your feet for cracks in the pavement." It's this really pasteurized, careful life that he's living. Not, it's all calculated, and there's no risk or freedom. Then that brings us to the second part of Reformation, and these lyrics later on that say, "Of all these weird creatures who lock up their spirits, drill holes in themselves, and live for their secrets," is definitely not a positive view of his life. And this view being of the aliens looking down on Earth. And in all pastoral works, it's the sense of the simpler life would be a better life, and it's looking at the country life as in like in the dictionary definition, in idyllic terms, that what we're doing, how we're living in cities is not as good as how it used to be, kind of with rose-colored glasses. And that brings us to idealism. And it's pretty clear in the lyrics, pretty explicit. Where in the third verse, he hopes that the aliens will take him aboard their ship so he can see the world as he'd love to see it, which is clear idealism in that he wants to look and see it as he wants to see it. And then in the fourth verse continues that he would talk to his friends and he'd show them the stars and the meaning of life. So he's hoping that returning to the simpler time, having a more clear conscience and clear view of things, that he would be able to fix everything and have a better understanding. So anyways, that's my analysis of Subterranean Homesick Alien, and kind of how it can fit into this view of a pastoral work. I hope you enjoyed it, and I owe big thanks to all the sources I've listed here, because without them I wouldn't have the perspective that I do. So I hope you enjoyed, and thank you so much for listening.